Hey guys, Khalil here. So, this is a part two on the video series of how to make a character. So, we talked about before that you need to create the fluff of your character in order to build out that foundation of who your character really is and in order to make your character truly interesting. Now, what we're going to be talking about is the crunch, the real meat and the heart of the story. Who, or not even who, but what can your character do and how well can they do it? So, like I said in the previous video, Dungeons and Dragons at its core is a storytelling game. And because it's a collaborative storytelling game, if, let's say, I'm a player and you're a dungeon master, me as the player, I say, oh, I want to slash the dragon's head off in one hit and kill it. But you as dungeon master are like, yeah, no, you're going to have to fight it for a couple minutes before you can finally get to that moment. And I want to kill the dragon, but you're saying I have to wait a little bit longer. We get into an argument and the collaborative story has a little bit of a hiccup because we both have two different viewpoints on what should happen next in the story. So in order to avoid all that clashing and whatnot, what Dungeons and Dragons does is it gives us math and mechanics and the crunch of the whole system itself. So then we don't have to argue about that stuff. It's roll the dice, do your math. If the math works out, then you kill it in one hit and we can... it's less of me telling you as a dungeon master telling me no as a character, and more of this is a foe you have to defeat. If you were to have enough damage or to hit it just right or to do the absolute most, then yes, you could kill it in one round. And we have mechanics that back it, and we have a whole system that gives you the backbone in order to be able to do that. So that's what the crunch is. It's essentially helping move along the collaborative storytelling. Now, the crunch isn't the only part of the storytelling. Remember that as players. The most important part of storytelling is the fluff. The crunch is simply there in order to help smooth over some bumps. So, there are six primary stats that you're going to need in order to fill out. You have your strength, which is essentially your physical strength and brawn and whatnot. Dexterity, how quick, nimble, and precise are you? Your constitution, which is your physical fortitude, how well can you stave off poison, stay awake, hold your breath, stuff like that. Your intelligence, which is how book smart you are. Your wisdom, which is how wise you are of the world itself and things within it. And your charisma, which is your sort of will over the world yourself, or your force of personality that exudes into the world. So those are the six stats that you need to figure out, and those six stats quite literally cover the whole part of the game. So how do we get these stats? Well, that really depends on your dungeon master. There are a few ways in order to get stats. You can either do the system called point buy, in which you have, you have all those stats start at 8. Yeah, all of them start at 8. And you have to spend a point, like you have a pool of points that you can spend in order to increase any of them to however much you want. The higher you increase them, the more points it costs. And yeah, so that's point buy. That's one of the ways to do it. I personally don't like that way because I find it creates average characters. And I'm a man that personally believes that all my players on my table are heroes, not peasants. They need to be the absolute force to be reckoned with. There's another way in order to do it that's called standard array. So if you look inside the player's handbook, just like I said, it's one of the core things you'll need to begin this game. There is a standard stat block for all characters in which you just take all 6 of those numbers, which I think it's 16, 16, 14, 12, 10, 10. I think that's what it is. Don't quote me on that. Just check the player's handbook. But yeah, so you take that standard array, you plug it in, and you modify it depending on anything. We'll get down on the road about that. Or you could do it the way I like to do it, which creates the most strongest heroes possible, which is rolling. You roll for your whole stats. Now, there are a couple ways to roll for stats. The way that I do it is I have my players roll 46s, keep the highest 3. If they roll 1, re-roll it, and they do that 7 times, and of those 7 times, whichever one's the smallest number, they get rid of it in order to keep 6. And they have the 6 best numbers statistically, so then they can put that on their character sheet. And what that does is it gives all of them the statistical average of having at least 118 or 17. It's like around there, which makes them have one thing that they're amazing at, which I like because, I like to have a table full of heroes, not peasants. And on top of that, I'm one of the dungeon masters that doesn't believe in overpowered because, okay, you deal 30 damage as a level 1 player. Well, I just add 60 health, as well as this monster deals 10 damage, which will kill you in 1 round. There's my balance. So that's just me. So that's how you do your stats. Now, when you roll up your stats, the stats themselves are simply a means to an end. What you do with those stats that you rolled up or you bought or you took from the standard array is you have to do a little bit more math in order to get them down into what we call their modifiers. And the modifiers are really the number you use for everything. The numbers that you roll generate your modifiers. So the math in order to generate your modifier is you take whatever number you rolled, minus it by 10, and then divide it by 2. So, for instance, a 14. 14 minus 10 equals 4. 4 divided by 2 equals 2. So you have a plus 2. And the plus 2 does matter because let's say you have an 8. 8 minus 10 equals negative 2 divided by 2 equals negative 1, which is a minus 1, which does matter because if there's a difference between a minus 1 and a plus 1. It's, self-explanatory in that regards. So when you're on your player character sheet, I'm trying to get this so you guys see it well. The big number, which is the number that you rolled that's generating your modifiers, goes in the small circle because it kind of doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things while you're playing, but it does matter what character leveling up and stuff like that in order to get your modifiers. And your modifiers go in the big square. Oh, you can't see that. In the big square because those are the numbers you're going to be primarily using all the time. Now, here's where it gets more mathy. And this is like probably the hardest part of creating any character is all the math and numbers and writings. So once you figure out the numbers for your modifiers, you then pick your class. And remember what I told you we were talking about in the last video? The fluff creates the foundation for the crunch. So if you decided that you wanted to take the idea that my player had, in which you are a pipe-smoking wizard illusionist who breathes in the smoke and billows it out, and that's your illusion spells, and your illusions come from the smoke itself. All right, so you're going to be a wizard. You're going to go inside your player's handbook and look up the wizard and find all the things that you're proficient in, which is all detailed like right on the second page, and its big title says proficiencies, and it'll tell you all that stuff. And when it says saving throws, it's talking about this box right here, the top box. And what you're going to do is you see these little circles? You bubble in each and every one of those little circles. And what that does is it gives you a proficiency in those things. So there are certain things that me and you are good at just in normal life. For instance, a football player is really good at playing football and is really good at being strong and running and having endurance. Versus a pilot is very good at flying a plane. We are very good at different things. So in order to correlate that into the crunch of the system, they give you proficiency bonuses, which is an additional bonus you get to your already base bonus that makes you a little bit better than the rest, if that makes sense. And as level 1s, which is most likely where all you will start, sometimes people start at different levels, like I start at level 3 sometimes, but at level 1, you always have a proficiency bonus of +2, which the proficiency bonus goes right in that circle right there. So you're going to bubble in those circles, and then literally you're going to take all the modifiers you have and put them inside the spaces on your saving throws, and if they're bubbled in, you'd add your proficiency bonus. It's self-explanatory. The next thing you're going to do is, in the exact same section, just a little bit below, you're going to have a list of skills that you can choose to be proficient in. Now, what skills are essentially when there's something that the Dungeon Master wants you to do that seems not plausible for you to immediately be able to do. Like, for instance, I can very easily lift up my computer mouse. There's no strength saving throw in our roll for that. But if I wanted to lift up the couch that I'm sitting on, the DM might say, you know what, make a athletics check. And that's just saying, let's see if you can do it. If you have like a +6 to athletics, you most likely can, but let's just see if you can. Let's see if maybe you don't. And it's just a way for the DM to provide checks and balances to whether or not you truly can do something or can't if they're a little iffy on it. So off of that list, you would choose With the wizard, I believe you get to choose 2. But each class is different. They give you a different list of skills to choose from. And once you choose each of those skills, you, once again, and make sure you guys can actually read this, bubble in the circles. Yeah, you want to bubble in the circle right next to the skill. And then right next to the skill, let me see if I can get this a little better for you guys to see. Like on the top, you see acrobatics. Right next to it, if you could see it, and if you were to download a PDF of these character sheets, it actually says DEX right next to it, which is dexterity. So on that line, you'd add your dexterity modifier to that skill. Again, see how these modifiers are just adding on everything inside the game? So as you're adding all your modifiers to them and your proficiency modifier, you just keep doing that, and that's all your skills. Once you do that, then you just have to generate your health, which is your hit dice, which essentially what hit dice are. Sorry, there's a fly in my house and it's really bothersome. What hit dice are essentially your health. It's like a way for you to heal without having to spend a ridiculous amount of time trying to heal. So you can roll the hit dice in order to heal yourself a little bit. And I'll maybe talk about that at a later date. But inside the book, it tells you that your starting health is your hit dice, which for a wizard, it's a 1d6, which is a 6-sided dice. So 6 sides, the maximum number you can have is a 6, plus your constitution modifier. And it's always plus your constitution modifier regardless of your class. There's your health. Once you have your health, you just go through, add the equipment that you get from your class, write down each of your class abilities, and then the only other thing that really changes the numbers for you is when you add in your race. Now, most people choose the mechanically advantageous race. So, for instance, if we go back to the illusionist wizards, their primary stat that they use is intelligence. Their spells require, they get so many spells dependent on their intelligence modifier. Their spells damage is sometimes dependent on their modifier. The ability to have foes not resist their spells is dependent on their intelligence modifier. So they're very intelligence-based spellcaster, which means you want to choose a race that's also very intelligence-based, like Gnome. Gnome has a +2 to intelligence, which if you went with the rolling, you'd most likely have an 18. Put that in your intelligence. You add that +2, that's 20. 20 minus 10 equals 10, divided by 2 equals a +5, which is the max you can possibly get. That's like the best you can get baseline, because 20 is the maximum number you can have. Other than that, you then write down all your abilities you get from your race itself. You write down all the proficiencies you get, you fill out the equipment, and yeah, that's it. That's all it is. That's how you make the crunch of your character mechanically. And at first, it's going to be really weird, and it's going to take you probably 3 hours, because my first character took me 4 in order to make it, because it was very kind of confusing, and it's just a lot of writing. Now I've made over 50 characters, and I can make it within like 12 seconds. Not 12 seconds, maybe 10 minutes, 5. So yeah, that's how to make your character part 2. Stay tuned. I got some more content for you guys. What I think I'm going to be doing is, in my next videos inside this video series, is talking about all the different classes and all the different abilities you could do with the classes, and sort of giving a overall class breakdown, so you guys can really get the feel of what each of these classes do and really decide what kind of crunch you're looking to go for. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video and have a fantastic day.